Hey guys, Kylo here. Welcome back to the channel. Studying weather. There's a couple ways to do it. You can read the textbooks, you can look at the maps and everything, but I find that learning anything, if you look at it visually, you pick up a lot more than you probably would just thinking about the theoretics of it all. So the way I like to study weather is to set up a time lapse, especially if there are clouds or something that's visible. Then you can see a lot of what's going on with the air. Also, flying through it on a paraglider, I've learned to feel what's going on, and when I've referenced the two over the years, I've been able to develop a better understanding of the way air moves in our atmosphere, at least at the lower levels. This is somewhat of a micrometeorology study, so let's look at all the time lapses that I've taken for 2020 and talk about what we're seeing here. Here is a day with no wind. Now, the only wind shear you're going to get on a day like this day is going to be at the edges of where that air is rising and sinking. There's not a lot of wind aloft. Everything's going up, coming down, up and down. This would be a day you could do a really nice triangle. If you know what you're doing, you could play a day like this, like a royal flush in a poker game. Just go where it's lifty, climb, hop to the next one. The lift is not broken. It's all together. Go straight up, straight down. You just look where it's going up and go there. Now, contrary to that, this is a day where the wind was stronger than the thermals, and you can see the nature of the clouds. It's completely shredded, and little pieces of cloud are just getting ripped off and blown away. Yet you can still see plainly the air is rising and sinking, but it's getting pushed so hard that there's no uniformity to it. This would have been a crappy day to fly. I think we were kiting this day. And this is a day I was leaving training and going to get tacos, and you could see plainly the shear layer where the top wind was blowing these little curls at the tops of the clouds. Whenever you get clouds at the shear layer, that's what you see, and that's what you'll feel if you fly through that layer. You'll feel the air doing that as you punch through it and go into the air above it. So when you see something like this, obviously it's wind shear, but I don't know that it's anything you couldn't go right up and through and just, experience some turbulence and then be clear of it. But that's what you're feeling when you go through a layer. Do you remember the African dust? If you've never experienced African dust, then you must live north of me, because this is about as far north as it ever comes. Maybe some in Texas. Now, I had to fiddle with the camera settings because it got so dark. We were looking right at the sun. We were flying this evening. It was an amazing evening to fly, but this is the sunset of the African dust. This was a day with some big convection going on. Now, we had a storm developing. We're looking west-northwest, but from the north, if you look off to the bottom right of the screen, you'll see the low-level jet busting in. That's the start of a gust front. That's the downdraft. Now, this is the actual gust front rolling through. Man, it was a big one. It was a big one. Now, this was another convective day. It was just on the verge of overdevelopment, at least as far as flying goes. Clearly some big updrafts, big downdrafts, but it was isolated. The whole sky was not banging around too hard this day. We were flying while this video was videoing. This was the tail end of a day where I did a free flight on my Xeno with the motor off for several hours, and it was a pretty gnarly day, but this is kind of the latter part of the day, just the development. You can see where some of the cloud got ripped off in the upper atmosphere there. That's kind of a neat thing. Here's one I kind of caught on accident. I just set my helmet on the ground, left it rolling, but there was a little sail developing off there to the northeast. We were training this day. Pretty neat that I captured it on video. You can also see a little bit of upper level wind shear at the tops of those clouds getting blown out. And here's yet another example of upper level wind shear ripping the tops off of these cumulonimbus clouds. This was looking south. We were training. You can see the wind shear clearly as this one raises that moisture up into the air. It hits that upper level and then drifts off the opposite way of the surface winds. So this is what these videos tells us. Yeah, this was some big overdevelopment. Overdevelopment here. Oh man, this was a massive storm that came right down our throats. It knocked the camera over. When the gust front hits, check it out here at the end. It knocks it over, and then there's my ugly mug right there standing over it. I'm I'm sure you've heard me discuss buoyancy to shear. So what we're seeing here is a low buoyancy to shear ratio. Now that's just it. It's a ratio. We were out here kiting because the winds were strong. They were strong enough to kite. But look, there was also convection happening. The air was lifting, condensing, and then you can just see it getting blowed to pieces. There's no real structure to the clouds. There are some that have some cohesiveness, but for the most part, it's just shredded to pieces, and the day is just gnarly, gnarly. You wouldn't want to be flying on a day like this. Now, here's a day that you would want to be flying. We've got some good development, some streeting, some cohesiveness to the clouds, yet there is some wind blowing. So, yeah, everything is moving the same direction. In fact, I believe I was flying this day. Look what I captured right here, frame by frame. There's Kyle on the Xeno cruising around. Yeah, fun day, man, fun day. This is kind of what I'm looking for on a good day. Oftentimes when running the paramotor school, I'll just put the camera out and you can see little flashes of wing and windsock or whatever in these videos. They're not supposed to be anything special, but I noticed a little bit of Virga falling. Now, this isn't the type of Virga you see out in the desert where it's coming out of these cumulus clouds. But what's happening here is you're getting some warm, moist stratocumulus clouds forming as the air mass pushes over a colder, drier air mass. The rain falls, it condenses, but it immediately gets eat up. And so you see this commonly with dissipation of the altocumulus, stratocumulus. So you hear some in the distance at the sunset. It was just a little bit of development. These could have been, no, I don't think they were cumulus. I think they were too high. There's a layer below them there. Or it could be behind them. Perspective is off sometimes when you're looking at these things, but I think that's probably stratocumulus dissipation on a minor scale. This is what the sky looks like when you've got wind shear happening above the cumulus development. You see the tops of them getting ripped off by that upper current? Now, just because it's wind shear doesn't necessarily mean that it's dangerous. And of course, we can't get near the clouds, but we can certainly fly high enough in this air to punch through that layer of shear. Now, is it dangerous? Can you handle it? That's something you got to ask yourself. Now, this was an interesting day of beautiful, big overdevelopment out here in the river bottom. This was a cumulonimbus, maybe a thunderstorm. There could have been a bit of thunder. Look at that convection. Look at the masses of air lifting up in the air. And it overdeveloped big this day. We got a really big gust front on camera. And I got some footage, I think, somewhere where I'm actually like running from the gust front. It's about that blew a tripod over. I had to go get the camera. Rain started falling. This is just looking around that day. Just check this out. And this was the gust front. I was looking west whenever the gust front was coming in. You can see it shearing underneath and pushing that air up into the dew point. See, you can just see the air pushing. The cloud development is just moisture in the air. You can see which way it's moving very plainly. This is the front edge of a gust front. It's almost like an invisible mountain of air that's pushing the other air up it. So very neat. Cool, dense air coming down, pushing out, and there's the rain at the core coming in. Yeah, it's fixing to hit us and wipe us out. Looks like the rain got us. It's on this lens. Is this good content? It's filming the drops. I should have set manual focus if I was gonna have it in the rain. So there's a storm coming right at us. I guess we're gonna go south to Naylor now. This is the Red Desert, Wyoming. Altitude elevation, 7,000 feet. That's what those thermals looked like this day. It actually looked like a real nice day to go fly, although you probably would have needed oxygen. I believe cloud base out there was around 18,000 feet, so it's a bit deceiving. It, yeah, looked like a good day, but I had to travel this day, so no flying. And this was the first bit of rain that I saw on that trip. This was the side of the road, possibly Nevada. I don't exactly remember. I've been driving for a couple of days, but I pulled over because I had rain hitting the windshield. And so I thought that I would just get a shower out there in the desert next to these train tracks. It didn't work. It quit rain. It was so dry. You could see the air just eating the rain. It was so dry out in this desert. Pretty fun times though. And this was definitely Nevada. This was a low pressure system that was pushing over whatever mountain range that is up north of northern Nevada, right south of Oregon. But I pulled over and watched this for a little bit. This was south of Montana, just before you entered Yellowstone National Park. There was thunder and lightning and Virga falling at sunrise. I'd been driving early morning before the sun came up, and I just thought this was pretty spectacular. Tried to set the time lapse up to catch it, but I didn't want to hang out too long, so these time lapses on the road are relatively short. If I'm doing them at home, I can let them go for a lot longer, but when you're traveling, side of the road, 30, 45 minutes, you're done. Got to roll, make miles. But yeah, Yellowstone was pretty neat. So this was on the way in. I believe I was headed south from Three Forks. I'd stopped at a grizzly bear enclosure and camped next to the bear pen, and then drove into Yellowstone here. And this is the Grand Teton Mountains. I believe that is Grand Teton Peak right there, center frame. Look at them throwing their own weather. They're knocking these cumies up. The sun was hitting them on the western faces. Now, when you talk about terrain and the angle of the sun and the wind, everything was perfect for this to be throwing some nice thermals. And it just trips me out that the way I've learned to read it is by watching these time lapses and then going and flying in these conditions. And you can really get a grasp on what's happening when you watch, like, this is about an hour's worth of footage sped up to a few seconds. And this is back home. This is some relatively mild wind shear. You can see where the tops are getting blowed over opposite to the direction that they're drifting from the ground. This would have been a nice day to fly. You could have gone through any of this, and obviously there would be turbulence. Anywhere you see the air shearing, there will be turbulence. It's up to the pilot to handle that, but this looked like a pretty good day. Anybody that went to the Endless Foot Drag in Kansas knows that the first 2 days we had these double cloud layers, and this was sunset on one of those days, and you can see the wind shear here. Now, I flew all up through that wind shear, no factor. Now, this isn't a time lapse. These are just some really nice cloud streaks that I saw on my way to the training field to meet students. Man, I wished I was up there flying. That's why I videoed it, so I could remember what this day looked like. This is some early morning footage, pre-sunrise. Actually, it's right at sunrise. You can see the clouds are knocking out the sun radiation, but the earth itself has heat, and the ground is warmer than the air in this situation. And you can see the thermals rising and boiling along on this time-lapse footage from the drone. Very neat. This next one here, you can actually see a little bit of rotor behind the trees. You see the little waves rolling back up against that tree line on the left? Yeah, it's mild. You could certainly fly through it, but that's what rotor looks like. Now, these are the first solar-driven thermals of the day. If you look at the tree lines that are facing the sun, you can see them throwing up those tiny little cumies out of the fog as the sun is beating on those trees and warming the air around them. Pretty neat to catch it from this perspective with the drone. And then as the sun heats the ground, of course, you can see everything kind of rise together, and you lose this initial little burst of energy that we can see at this part. See, right about here, everything just kind of lifts off, and you lose that perspective that we had in the previous part of the footage. And again, a just post-sunrise video of the first few thermal waves coming through the earth. Pretty neat to watch it from this perspective. I really like using the drone for these early morning fog videos. You can also see a wind shear happening in this as well. The upper winds are blowing different than the surface winds. Tough to say where it's happening though. What we got here is just some regular old wind shear convective activity. Nothing too spectacular about this day. You know, I don't always pick up a lot from the footage. I know what's going on here. You can look at it and easily kind of decipher that the thermals are sort of broken, just a meh kind of day. Nothing special here. And here we've got more what I call the early morning earth thermals. You know, the sun's not hitting this. This heat is rising because the water in the trees are warmer than the air. It's also very, very dense fog this morning, but you can see what's happening under a time-lapse situation. Low visibility, no flying for me this day. This was a frontal passage with very high winds. I believe this was maybe the day that I filmed the buzzards with the drone. I just kept on playing with the drone, found this weather kicking off, thought I would video it. This is the backside of a northwestern front pushing through. A cold front, you can see the winds aloft pushing the clouds over from the base. This is a different angle on the same day. Again, big development. Rain falling. These are cumulonimbus, possibly thunderstorms. I don't remember if there was thunder or not. That's the real difference between those two. Cumulonimbus and thunderstorms, the only difference is lightning. That's how you know if it's one for the other. Otherwise, they look about the same. And I'm just going to end this video with some sunset time lapses that I've picked up. Here's a few of them that I liked. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Catch you real soon on the next one. Much love. Kyle out.